We bought our dream home, but we only spent one night there. My husband thinks we escaped. I know we just took a piece of that house with us. We closed on our first real home 3 weeks ago. Oleg, my husband, was over the moon. Our 5-year-old twins, Vera and Milo, were practically vibrating with excitement. Even Caspian, our 6-month-old, seemed to sense the change, all gurgles and wide-eyed wonder from his car seat. Oleg had spent a week with his brother getting the place ready, moving in the big furniture, setting up beds. A surprise, he'd called it. I should have been happy. God, I wanted to be. But the moment I carried Caspian over the threshold, the air changed. It got thick, heavy, like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. The smell of fresh paint and lemon cleaner couldn't hide the other scent underneath. It was like damp soil, like a freshly dug grave. I told myself it was just an old house. Old houses have smells. Oleg spread his arms wide, a grin splitting his face. So, what do you think, Alina? Vera spun around in the grand foyer, her arms out like she was on stage. It's a castle. Can we make the living room a ballroom? No way, Milo shouted, already making a break for the massive curving staircase. It needs to be a racetrack. Oleg caught him around the waist just before he could launch himself up the first step. Hold on there, champ. No racing until your room is unpacked. Their voices shot up to the high ceiling and bounced back down, but the echo was wrong. It lingered a second too long, a ghostly repeat of their laughter. I adjusted Caspian on my hip, and my eyes went to the top of the stairs. The landing was dark, a pool of shadow the afternoon sun couldn't touch. For just a second, a flicker of movement in the reflection of the big mirror hanging on the wall, something tall and thin passing behind me. I spun around. Nothing, just the empty hallway. Oleg's smile softened when he saw my face. Hey, you alright? I forced my lips to curve up. Yeah, just a lot to take in. He came over and kissed my temple, his hand warm on my arm. I told you, it's perfect. I wanted to believe him. After years crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment that felt more like a shoebox with a recurring mold problem, this house was supposed to be our sanctuary, a place to breathe. But looking up at that dark landing, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was holding its breath. Waiting. That night, for a little while, everything felt almost normal. I set a big pan of lasagna on the new dining room table, the smell of garlic and cheese finally chasing away that earthy scent. Oleg poured juice for the twins, wine for us. The sound of forks scraping against plates, of my family's chatter, it almost filled the space. I was just starting to relax, to think maybe I was just tired, stressed from the move. Maybe this could work. Then Vera started talking. Not laughing, not giggling, just talking, in a quiet, serious voice. What's so interesting over there, sweetie? I asked, following her gaze to the empty archway leading into the hall. She didn't look at me, she just pointed with her fork. The quiet lady, she said, her voice matter of fact. She's sad. Oleg put his fork down. What lady, Vera? Vera's brow furrowed. She was right there, by the stairs. She's looking for her baby. Milo peered around his sister, scowling at the empty space. There's no one there, Vera. You're being weird. A cold prickle went up my spine. I looked at the hallway. Nothing. Just the deep shadows of a house settling into night. But then Caspian, sitting in his high chair beside me, let out a soft coo. He lifted his chubby arms, reaching for that same empty corner, a gesture he usually only made for me or Oleg. His little hands opened and closed, grasping at nothing. I scooped him out of his chair, my heart starting a low, heavy thud against my ribs. Who do you see, little man, huh? I whispered, trying to keep my voice light. His smile vanished. He just kept staring into the hallway, his blue eyes wide and unfocused. I put him back, my own appetite gone. The back of my neck tingled. For a split second, before I turned back to my plate, I swear I saw it too. Not a person, just a distortion in the air. A column of heat where there should have been none. Later, after the kids were showered and tucked into their new bunk beds, Oleg wrapped his arms around me in our new bedroom. The sheets were crisp and cool. The baby monitor on my nightstand was a small, glowing eye, showing a perfect, peaceful view of our sleeping children. "See?" he whispered into my hair. "We're home." I leaned into him, my body tense. "Oleg," I started, my voice barely audible. "I know this house is everything we've worked for, but..." He pulled back to look at me, his easy smile gone. "But what, Alina?" The words spilled out. "I feel like we're trespassing. Like someone is always right there, in the next room, watching. And Vera, what she said at dinner, and Caspian reaching for nothing. I saw something, Oleg, I swear." He was quiet for a long time, his thumb rubbing circles on my shoulder. "Lena," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "They're kids, in a big, strange new house. Their imaginations are running wild. And you're exhausted. We're all exhausted. I'm sure it's nothing. It's not nothing," I insisted, pulling away a little. A draft slithered across the floor, cold enough to raise goosebumps on my arms. "I think this place is haunted." Oleg let out a short, tired laugh. "Okay, honey, I think you need to sleep. You've been on edge since we got here." "It's called listening to my gut," I muttered, but I let him pull me back down. He kissed my forehead, told me he loved me, and was snoring softly within minutes. I lay there for hours, wide awake, listening. Just after midnight, I heard it. A sound from downstairs, a heavy scraping noise, like someone was dragging a kitchen chair, slowly, deliberately across the hardwood floor. "It's just the house settling," I told myself. It was a lie. I must have drifted off, because when I opened my eyes again, the room was pitch black. My phone glowed on the nightstand. 3:10 a.m. The house was silent, too silent. The kind of oppressive quiet that presses in on your eardrums. Then I heard it. It came from the baby monitor. A sound so faint I thought I was dreaming it at first. A lullaby. A tinny, off-key version of Rockabye Baby, sung by a woman with a thin, cracking voice. My blood went cold. I snatched the monitor from the nightstand. The screen was a blizzard of static, but the awful, wavering song kept playing. I shook it, my hands trembling. The screen flickered, cleared. The room was just as we'd left it. Vera and Milo were asleep in their bunks. Caspian was in his crib. And a woman was standing over him. Her back was to the camera. She was tall and thin, wearing a long, dark dress. Her hand was resting on the rail of the crib, her fingers impossibly long. She was humming the lullaby, her head bowed over my son. My breath hitched in my throat. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. Slowly, as if she knew I was watching, she turned. Her face wasn't a face. It was a smooth, pale oval of skin. No eyes, no nose. Just a thin, black slit for a mouth that stretched open as she hummed. Two other figures materialized beside her. A man, unnaturally tall, and a small child. They were just as blank, just as featureless. My mind screamed. This wasn't happening. Then their bodies began to change. The screen didn't glitch. They warped. The woman's arms elongated, her knuckles dragging on the floor. The little girl's head snapped backward at an angle that wasn't humanly possible. The tall man's body stretched upward, his blank face pressing against the ceiling, his shape dissolving into shadow. A single, distorted word crackled through the speaker, a dry, rasping whisper. Mine. The sound that tore out of my throat was raw. "Oleg," I screamed, shaking his shoulder with all my strength. "Wake up, Oleg. Wake the fuck up." He shot up, blinking in confusion. "Alina, what the hell is wrong?" I shoved the glowing monitor into his face. "Look." He stared at the screen, his face slack with disbelief. He saw it. The twisting, inhuman shapes. The long, spider-like limbs. The blank, awful faces. His denial shattered. "Jesus Christ," he breathed. He was out of bed before I was, pulling on pants, his face pale and set. I followed him, my legs feeling like they were moving through water. He threw open the door to the kids' room. It was still. The night light cast a soft orange glow. The twins were asleep. Caspian was breathing softly in his crib. Everything looked normal. The air was frigid, and the smell of wet earth was so strong it made my stomach turn. Oleg took one step inside. He said, his voice a low growl. Then I saw it. The air above the crib shimmered like a heat haze. It held for a second, then vanished. Oleg turned to me, his jaw clenched, his eyes hard. "Alina, get the kids." "What?" "Get the kids," he repeated, his voice like iron. "We're leaving, now." I didn't argue. The terror in his voice was more convincing than anything I'd seen on the monitor. I scrambled to the bunks, pulling my sleeping children into my arms, wrapping them in their blankets. Oleg was already at the crib, lifting Caspian, car seat and all, with a gentleness that broke my heart. We rushed down the stairs, a silent, terrified parade. Halfway down, the lights flickered, died, then came back on. Vera whimpered, burying her face in my shoulder. "Mama, I'm scared." "I know, baby," I whispered, my heart hammering. "I am too." Oleg reached the front door and twisted the knob. Nothing. He twisted it again, harder. It stuck. A soft giggle echoed from the top of the stairs. It was a child's laugh, but it was thin and cold and utterly wrong. We both looked up. They were standing there, the three of them, no longer flickering. They looked solid. Their blank faces were turned toward us. "Fuck this," Oleg snarled and threw his shoulder against the door. Once, twice. On the third slam, the wood splintered around the lock, and the door flew open with a scream of tortured metal. "Go," he yelled. I ran. I didn't care that my feet were bare on the cold porch. The twins were a dead weight in my arms, their quiet sobs shaking their little bodies. The night air was like a slap in the face. I fumbled with the SUV door, my hands shaking too much to work properly. Oleg was right behind me. He practically threw Caspian's car seat into my arms as I got the door open. I buckled the kids in with frantic, clumsy movements, then scrambled into the passenger seat, slamming the door just as Oleg dove behind the wheel. Through the windshield, I saw them pour out of the front door. They weren't walking. They were scuttling, moving on all fours like horrific, pale spiders, their long limbs pulling them across the porch and onto the lawn at an impossible speed. "Oleg, drive," I screamed. He twisted the key. The engine coughed. For one heart-stopping second, nothing happened. Then it roared to life. He slammed the SUV into reverse and floored it. The tires spun on the gravel as the things scrambled toward us. One of them, the woman, reached the driver's side. A long, pale hand slammed against the window next to Oleg's head. The glass spiderwebbed with cracks. Then the tires caught. We shot backward down the driveway. I risked a look back. They didn't follow us onto the road. They stopped, perfectly still, right at the edge of our property line. Three dark, twisted shapes standing in the red glare of our taillights. They just stood there and watched us go.